We're in a space right now in content creation where everyone's like niche down. You have to fit like a certain box. And that's so anti of who I am. I just feel like sometimes brands really just try to put creators in a box where it's like, just try and give people a chance.
Explore the minds and marketing strategies behind today's winning brands and businesses. Tap into the power of the creator economy with Earned by CreatorIQ.
Hi, I'm Brit Starr, CMO at CreatorIQ. We're on a mission to make business more human and humans more impactful. So I'm talking directly to the leaders, doers, and creators changing marketing from the inside out. Let's get started.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Earned. I am so excited to have Zaina Sesay with me on today's episode. Hi.
Hi.
So I'm excited to talk to Zaina. Zaina is a full-time creator who has really been on an interesting journey. I think when I was learning more about Zaina, what really struck me is how intertwined her journey as a creator has been with her professional pursuits in general. Just to give a little bit of background, you really had the opportunity early on. You were selected as one of 10 participants in the Creator Institute from YouTube early on in your career, which inspired a career in entertainment, but on the talent casting, behind the scenes, unscripted side. That led to you moving on to being a full-time creator for the first time in 2024, which we'll definitely talk more about, which then led you to be front of camera on reality TV, which has now led you to your next chapter as an entrepreneur. So it is incredibly linear and connected in a way that I didn't realize until I wrote it all down.
Yeah. And I honestly wake up some days and I'm like, how did I get here? What in the roadmap led me to where I'm at today? But somehow it just all makes sense too.
I love that. Well, let's start at the beginning. Give me a background on kind of how you got started down this road.
Yeah, so I was that kid that didn't do like sports or just anything. I actually struggled in high school, like figuring out if I had a real talent because all of my friends in high school were either cheerleaders or they were on a sports team. And I was like, I don't know, do I have any gifts? And then I took a television production class. And that is what sparked everything for me. I was like, wait, so I can create stories. My parents had a camcorder. I would enlist my siblings as unpaid actresses and actors to do all of these skits. I started a YouTube channel with my best friend in high school. I was editing on iMovie. So I started out pretty like early on as a content creator before I even knew what that was or what it would evolve into. That's what led me to study film and television in college at Temple University. I applied for the YouTube Creator Institute contest my sophomore year. So I submitted a project I did in my videography class. It was like a self-portrait. You can't find it, so don't go
I
looking
was
for
just going to ask.
it. One day I might reveal it again, but how those early days projects are just so embarrassing. So I submitted that. It was like a nationwide contest, enlisted everyone to vote for it, won the contest. So that was my first time visiting LA as a sophomore. I was like 20. I wasn't even 21. I couldn't go to the bar or anything. And that is what really like put in my mind, I need to move to LA after college. Then I started interning at MTV. At the time I was in Philly, but I would go to New York 3 times a week on the Greyhound, hustling and grinding. And that's what put me on the track with unscripted television. So I felt like at the time I had to choose between doing behind the scenes or in front of camera. I was hungry to like produce shows and do talent and casting. So that's what led me on my corporate journey in doing talent casting and creative development. And from there, last year, I took a leap of faith to just jump in front of the camera and do what I was always passionate about, which is storytelling and telling my own story and just being like vulnerable and bringing everything to life.
I think it's so fascinating because we talk a lot today about how kids growing up want to be creators. That is like the aspiration. And so I think it's so interesting that early on you had one, like the interest and passion in creating content, but also following that experience with YouTube Creative Institute, took it behind the scenes and took it into more of a traditional path first. Did you learn a lot through that experience that has guided the way you create content today?
I do feel like having that traditional experience in corporate, working at networks. I worked at MTV, VH1. I worked at a digital startup. And I think all of that really just honed my skill sets when it comes to producing content like 360. So even in my traditional role at Viacom at the time, which is now Paramount, I was working on the current series team where after a show got greenlit, my team would work with a production company to produce it from very beginning development, the casting, signing off on the creative, being on set, watching the cuts, giving edits, and then seeing how it aired, and then the social part of things. So I was able to see things from beginning all the way to the end, being very hands on. And that just really helped me develop a skill set for storytelling and knowing how to connect to an audience in an authentic way. So that's something that now as a content creator, I find myself tapping into that. Like I find myself giving myself notes on edits. Like, nope, we have to do this, or like we have to make sure it makes sense.
That's amazing. Yeah. So we first met in October of last year. So you were finishing your first calendar year as a full-time creator. You also were part of the Snapchat 523 program. Talk to us a little bit about your first year as a full-time content creator, some of the lessons you learned, and some of the experiences that, really accelerated your progress.
Yeah. So the first year is I feel like the most challenging year for anything. When you're starting something new, it's like, all right, reset. I came from a very corporate structure, expected a paycheck every other week or every week, whatever the pay schedule was, showing up, doing my job. With content creation, it's very entrepreneurial. Like you have to hold yourself accountable. You have to take inventory of your time. You have to seek a schedule for yourself and resources and figuring out like how to make things work. Also, just being a firm believer that when you're on the right path, doors just kind of open for you. I left my corporate job, but it also kind of ended at the same time. Like the company, I don't think is active right now. And I was applying for so many jobs that I was overqualified for and doors were just closing. So I was like, all right, this is my sign to just do what I feel like I'm always been meant to do. And I applied for the 523 program, which for people who don't know, it's a diversity program with Snapchat where there are 15 creators across the country and they basically fund your creator journey. So there's a monthly stipend, they pair you with mentoring, they help you get brand deals, and they really just hold your hand. So I applied for it. I'm getting chills while I'm talking about it. While I was like in that weird transition, and I was one of the 15. I had no idea what happened. I was just like, I'm shooting in the dark. And it was just like the biggest blessing in disguise. So I feel like although the first year was challenging, just having that safety net of the 523 program, which has been nothing but amazing, has really just helped me with that. So I would say just some of the highs so far has been just building like an engaged like community and just seeing like how my content can really just help people like on their journey. Like with the content I create, I'm all about transparency. I don't like to be buttoned up. I'm into fitness, but here's how I fell off and here's how I'm getting back on. So I just love being able to inspire other people and like getting their DMs and questions and stuff. And then some of the biggest challenges that I would say is just navigating burnout. Like there's a different type of burnout. There's corporate burnout where you have your boss breathing down your neck, and there's burnout where you feel like you have to wear many hats. You're shooting, you're editing, like all of that. And then I would also say just creating like meaningful relationships with brands where it's not like one-off opportunities. I feel like a lot of times when you're early in your creator journey, a lot of brands don't like to put that much backing behind you. They prefer, I'm assuming, to go with creators who have been doing it for longer or have a set type of content that they create. And it's just really difficult early on building like those meaningful relationships.
Okay, I love that. There's so much in there. I feel like the first thing that really stood out to me is that as a creator, you are a brand owner, you're a business owner, you are operating all facets of your business, both on the creative side, but also on the operational side. And oftentimes you're going alone at that, right?
Yeah, for sure. It can be a very lonely journey. Like, of course, you can have support from friends and family, but at the end of the day, like, you're your own business and you have to figure things out on your own because there's no one holding yourself accountable but you. Like, it's just you. So you're placing a lot of pressure and bets on yourself. And that can create self-doubt, that can create anxiety if like brand deals don't roll in or you're not necessarily seeing the fruits of your labor, or like if the algorithm doesn't push content out that you spent hours editing. Like there's a lot that comes with that where you have to constantly keep yourself afloat and just have the faith that at the end of the day, the amount of work that you put in will pay off.
I love too that you talked a lot about community and creating transparency and vulnerability. I know that your content really centers on like wellness, lifestyle, fitness, but really bringing, I think I read something that you call it holistic ish lifestyle. Talk to me a little bit about that because I think it really fits into the way you're describing your journey and kind of bringing people into the process and kind of what's going on with you as you go through these transformations over time.
For sure. So, something about me is that I've always, especially when I talked about early on in high school, where I just didn't feel like I had any talents, I was very insecure. As I've grown and evolved as a woman, one thing that's always stuck to me is like, how can I push myself out of my comfort zone to try new things and break out of the limitations that we put in our minds? Like, there are things from our childhood where someone's like, oh, you can't dance. So all of a sudden, you're like, I'm never going to dance. This
Yeah.
isn't me. It's limiting belief. So everything with my brand is true to like who I am and how I see life. So even with like my wellness brand and lifestyle brand that I have right now, it's really just about how to push myself out there, out of my comfort zone in fitness, wellness, self-care, fashion, beauty, like trying new things and being okay with the highs and lows. I'm very like open and transparent about it too, where it's like I like to show my clumsy moments. I like to show when it was actually like a failed moment and learnings and really bring my community like into it. Like right now, Snapchat sees everything. And I just feel like that transparency just makes you connect more with your audience where it's like, "Oh my god, like, that happens to me too." And that's something, like, even, like, holistic-ish, like, I'm not sitting here like, "Oh, I'm only doing vegan this or I'm only doing that." It's like, no. Like, let's figure out how we can make ourselves better every day where it's not a pressure of picture perfect. So that's where, like, the holistic-ish comes in.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I also love the idea of removing limiting beliefs and using this practice of pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone and encouraging other people to do the same through sharing your experience. What are some examples of you pushing yourself out of your comfort zone that come to mind?
Oh my goodness. Literally every day. So for example, I wouldn't consider myself a makeup girly. Like I do the bare minimum. Like what you see on my face is the bare minimum. So something that I have been doing lately is trying makeup tutorials. And I also am a firm believer in like you don't have to do it solo. Like you can reach out to friends, family, or like other professionals to help you. So right now I connected with a makeup artist and we're gonna start like a mini series where she teaches me how to do certain makeup looks and she does half my face and I do the other half and then it's a reveal at the end. That's a way of me like stepping out of my comfort zone where it's like I typically wouldn't put out content like this because I just don't know what I'm doing, but I want to take people on a journey with me. Like come with me a long journey as I figure out how to really beat my face.
I love that, and learn something new. Again, like, I think the process of learning, like, being in that learning cycle in and of itself is outside of our comfort zone as humans. Like, I love learning. I love being outside of my comfort zone, but it still is, like, it can be unsettling to be in a space where you're trying to learn or do something that you haven't yet mastered or kind of figured out, and I think that's a really vulnerable place to be, especially when you're sharing it with hundreds of thousands of people.
Right, and that's the other thing too, because there is that other side of social media where people are all experts in whatever you're doing. They have degrees in it, so there are the comments that come in where it's like, "Oh, you should have done this instead of that," or like, your form is wrong in that fitness video." Like, everyone will always critique, so it's like silencing that noise and embracing it, and also just being like, I'm very open, like, if I'm wrong in something, I'm like, "Oh, let me do more research to see if what they're saying has any validity to it." You kinda have to have that approach with it because it is a very vulnerable thing where I just wanna break that barrier and bring people along the journey with me, like, even with fitness right now, I'm a fitness enthusiast, so I don't have my certification right now. So when people are like there's a difference between like, okay, you're a fitness girly, you do these videos versus like, okay, you're a trained expert. And one of the things that I'm doing this year is actually getting my certification. So instead of just popping out and being like, "Ooh, I'm certified now," I'm going to take people on that journey with me as I'm studying for it and as I'm learning. I just want to break that wall and bring people on the journey as I evolve and as I try to reach my goals and everything.
I love that. You talked a little bit about the role of Snapchat and just how it creates those instant transparency moments with you and your community on that channel. Walk me through how you see different channels, what your content looks like on, say, Snapchat versus an Instagram. How do you think about like community and content across the channels that you create on?
Yes. So with Snapchat, when I say they see everything, they see everything. They see me in the morning, they see like the nuances, they see me ramble, they see me run into walls by accident. Like there's just a level of transparency with them that it's so interesting because on some of the other platforms, you're looking for the picture perfect thing. You're looking for the right song, the trending song. It has to be the right amount. Like how you capture someone's attention within the first 3 seconds so they watch the rest. And that pressure of just having everything super curated is what I see like on other platforms versus Snapchat, where it's the complete opposite, where it's like, I don't have to worry about posting times. I don't have to worry about editing. I can just come on and like bring people along like my everyday journey. So I love that about Snapchat because it's really built a solid community even in the early phases of my content creation because they want to see like those nuances where even when I announced that I was gonna be on The Ultimatum on Netflix, let me tell you, they were upset with me. They were so mad. They were like, "How did you hide this from us, and when were you in a relationship?" Like, they were actually real life upset with me, and I'm like, "I'm so sorry," but I actually started snapping after the show shot. Spoiler alert, no longer with that guy, so you never met him. And then, it was all out of love, but then this is how deep the community goes. So when I announced I was on the show, promos were rolling out, they were messaging me like, "Zaina, I don't have Netflix, but I'm downloading it for you. Like, I'm subscribing, like, watching." And that's how deep the community is on Snapchat because they get to see you for who you are and not just like the curated version.
And they know you first, right? It's like that's what I'm hearing from you. It's like they know you first, and then they build that connection with you almost the same way you would interact with, like, your group chat, like your friends, your
Yeah,
right?
it's like being on FaceTime with your friends, which is the analogy we love to say about Snapchat because it's literally that. I really, like, value that about that community because you're able to really they trust you. Even when the show aired, they were like, "Oh, yeah, you're the same person that we see on Snapchat. Got it." Like, cool.
Confirmed. I actually do wanna talk about that. So you were on the ultimatum. It was a transformative experience for you and has really led you to kind of an evolution of your current chapter and some of the projects you're really investing into. You walk me through what experience was like for you and kind of what you've been able to turn that into?
Yes. So the ultimatum was the best thing that could ever happen to me. It was the most challenging, like emotionally, mentally, physically, like everything. But it brought me to where I'm at today. And I would go through that painful experience a million times over. So for those of you all who have never seen The Ultimatum, it's a show on Netflix where there are 6 couples and one person out of the relationship issues their partner an ultimatum. You either get married or get engaged or you break up. And once you get there, you end up swapping partners. So I started dating the other men, the guy I was with dated the other women. And at the end, you do a trial marriage with that person, and then you flip to do a trial marriage with your original partner, and then you figure it out. So I had a very crazy experience. Did not end up with a guy, and tune in if you want to see more. But from that experience, I was catapulted into a very deep season of healing. And it was like the breakup happened, my job was ending. Like I was in a very just like transitional period in my life where I just had to really rely on faith to like get through it. And once I released everything with the relationship, because there was a lot of gaslighting and manipulation, I just decided to choose myself. And with that came a very deep healing journey where I was depressed. I found myself slipping into depression. Like I wasn't eating. I was trying to make sense out of what was going on. I wasn't prioritizing like working out. And then I had a moment where I had to snap out of it. And I was like, you know what? Going through a breakup is like going through the 5 stages of grief because you're grieving like the loss of that relationship. So from that, I developed a guided journal on healing where it goes through the 5 stages of grief. It pairs it with holistic mind, body, and soul. And each stage gives you like prompts to make sure that you're healing like in a holistic way. And it's a direct reflection of like the healing journey that I had, what got me to where I'm at today, where I'm at peace and I've released everything that happened, but also went through the stages to make sure that I was addressing and not just burying like any hidden emotions because that's really important. So it's also aligned with just my wellness brand and, mental health. And that I announced the journal on my birthday, which was 2 weeks ago now.
That's right. Happy birthday. And congratulations. That's a huge undertaking to put something out that way and self-publish.
For sure. It gave what I went through purpose. And that was the one thing coming out of that painful experience was that I want to be able to help people who were also going through the same thing because even when the show aired, I was getting flooded, still getting flooded with messages of just women and men who were inspired by my journey. And that's something that I feel like I wanted to give back as a resource because we all go through crazy breakups and we need to heal so we're not carrying trauma into our next relationship.
I definitely think that, like, if you put yourself out there, good things come to you, but you have to be active in that pursuit, right? And so many times, I think throughout your journey, you were open enough to receive good things that came to you. Some of the experiences you had early on with the Creator Institute or with the SNAP 523 program, or even using, what was a pretty traumatic experience and turning that into something good. But you acted on those things, you applied, you leaned in. And I think the combination of those two things is something that people forget. Yes, you have to really work hard and kind of understand how to make things happen for yourself, but you also have to be really open so that things can come to you at the same time.
Yeah, no, I love that. Like you have to put the work in, but you also have to be open. You also have to release the self-doubt. And that is something that I realized, especially just from where I was very insecure growing up into evolving through different stages in my life is the moment I released like self-doubt is when my arms were open. Because when you have self-doubt, you're really like closed off. You're like, I don't know if I deserve this. I don't know if I should even apply. There are probably better people out there for me. But when you release it, like that's when you can really just receive whatever is meant for you. And just also on the flip side of things, recognizing when doors close, there's a better door open. And then really just remembering times when that proved true. So that's something that has kind of helped me in my journey where it's like, okay, this door closed at this point in life, but if that door opened, then this door wouldn't have opened for me later down the line. So it's like a combination of just really like taking time to just reflect. I think sometimes in life we move so fast and we have to really just take inventory of like where we are, what we're doing. Self-care is another really big part of my brand too. And it's really assessing like where you are and what your body needs or what you need mentally in this moment and allowing space for that to happen.
I love that. Okay, so one of the things that I really admire about you is how entrepreneurially focused you are. I'd be really curious since, again, like you have the creative hat, but also the business hat. What can brands do to be better partners to you and other creators? What are you hoping to see more of from brands? Just kind of curious to get your take on, again, kind of the business of the business that you do in terms of like brand partnerships and what that looks like.
Yeah, so when it comes to brand partnerships, just giving creators more opportunities. Like I could be completely wrong about this. This is just my perspective, but I think we're in a space right now in content creation where everyone's like niche down, niche down. You have to fit like a certain box. And that's so anti of who I am. Don't put me in a box. If I want to pop out and do home decor, just because I don't have a track record of doing home decor doesn't mean that it won't do well on my page or it won't attract people. And that's something that, okay, so for example, real life example, right now I'm doing a DIY project in my apartment and I want to create like a content wall. So I reached out to a few brands, wallpaper brands, to see if we could even, it didn't even have to be paid. I'm like, just a collab. But they didn't see a record of home decor on my page. So I was declined for opportunities like that. I'm still going to do it, but it's like, I just feel like sometimes brands really just like try to put creators in a box where it's like, just try and give people a chance to prove like otherwise, or just maybe that could kick off a whole like niche for me or mini series. We have no idea. So I think just that being more open minded and just trying to build like ongoing relationships instead of just one off transactions. And lastly, I think a feedback loop. I think sometimes like brands and content creators move so fast where it's like, all right, even if they get you for one campaign, they may have feedback of what they would have liked better or what would have worked or what would work for a different campaign. But there's not that feedback loop that comes around where it's like, if I did an ad and it was more just like lifestyle and conversational, but you want something more like addy that you can just put up, give that feedback in that room for the relationship to grow and to nurture that relationship.
I love that. I just listened back to your panel at our event this past October, and one of the things that Lala said, which I really liked about this, was brands should tell creators what drew them to the creator in the first place. Like, what did they like about your content that kind of sparked that interest that made them want to work with you? Because that'll give you a good idea of the kind of content that really resonates with their brand and kind of what they're trying to achieve. It's like a different way of saying the same thing, but I really liked that. It's like, here's why I was drawn to you in the first place. Here's what caught my eye.
Exactly. No, I think that's so important just to have those conversations. And even with me, I know some creators are probably like, "Oh, just let me do my thing." I'm like, I would prefer if we have a conversation about like, "Hey, here are a few ideas that I have. Which do you prefer?" Versus going and doing it and then it not be exactly what they had in mind. So then they cross you off the list for another campaign. It's like, let's nurture the relationship to see if we can create something valuable that works for both sides, because there's always a middle ground too. So I just think having those meaningful conversations and being less transactional will build a better relationship on both sides.
Yeah, and we're seeing that too just in the data. Like, it works better when brands and creators work together over longer periods of time, when they grow that mutual lifetime value, they become more productive partners both ways. Like, it is actually more productive for the brands as well, and so I think there's a lot to that.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense because also if I'm introducing a product to my community and it's only one time, like, they wanna see, "Alright, is this just an ad or is this something that you're integrating into, like, your lifestyle that you like and love?" And I think that's a part where there's a missed opportunity with it, where it could be one-off and people are just like, "Oh, whatever." Or you can just continue to, like, bring and warm your audience up to it.
Yep, I love that. Okay, I actually think that brand partnerships on Snap specifically, like, people still have a lot of questions around that. I know one of your first partnerships was with Clinique through the 523 program. Talk to me about how brand partnerships work on Snap. Do they look different than brand partnerships that you've had on other platforms? What can brands learn about how to pursue partnerships on Snap in a productive way?
Yeah, so with Snapchat, I think they're also evolving the way that brands and creators can work together. They're working on something I don't know if I could talk about, but I'm in the beta program for it. I literally had a call for it yesterday. So I was like, wow, this is actually going to be a game changer for like brands to connect with creators and it be seamless. So there is something like coming down the pipeline, but The way that Clinique worked, so with 523, there is another company called Ensemble, which is kind of like that in between person to help bridge the gap between like the brands and negotiate for equal pay when it comes to diverse creators. And they sent me a brief. I was able to send them ideas of what I was going to work on. It was a very collaborative thing where they're like, oh, this is great. Or, oh, change this, send the feedback loop with like the actual content. And then hosting, I did 3 different videos, and on Snapchat, you can post on your story. And if you're a verified Snap creator, they don't disappear in 24 hours. There's an option to keep it up for 24 hours, 3 days, and then a week. So I left it up for a week. And then on Snapchat, outside of stories, there's a section called Spotlight. And that is where it goes out to millions of Snapchatters and it hits an algorithm similar to like Instagram Reels or TikTok. So I was able to put it on both of those. And a lot of times the brands will also ask you to save it on your page as like a saved story. So if you go to my page, you'll see my Clinique ads on there. And that's a way that brings longevity to whatever the campaign is.
You have some optionality there.
Yeah, there's some options with it.
That's really cool. Does the content feel different? Like when you're doing branded content on Snap, does it feel different? Is it more, you talked about again, the like, they see everything. Does it kind of fit that vibe or?
It definitely does. So the content, especially with Clinique, I made it so that it was very just like on brand for what the type of content and conversations that I have with my Snap audience. I call them my Snap fam. It was very more so like conversational and less like here's a product and here are all of like the attributes of what happens, because I just felt like that wouldn't necessarily resonate and it would just feel like an ad to them. But from there sparked a lot of like great conversation because at the time I had just come back from a trip in the jungle. Don't ask, but my skin was like, I realized my skin barrier was weak. And one of the attributes of the Clinique product was that it helps build your skin barrier. So I was able to connect that story because they saw that I was struggling in the jungle and connected back to like, yeah, remember when I was there, like this is what happened to my skin and this is the product that I'm using to help rebuild. So I think there's just more connectivity with the audience in Snapchat because they know the ins and outs. So if brands allow you to have those like real conversations and connect it to something real that they already know about you, I think it resonates more.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so you've had a huge year, just past your 1-year anniversary being a full-time content creator. You have your journal coming out. You're in the beta program for the new kind of Snap program. What does the next year look like for you?
I think for me, I want to continue expanding my full-on wellness brand. So Zay Exclusive is what it's called. And that overspans like fitness, the wellness, the self-care, just really like expanding like the products that come with it. So I am launching the journal that will be available in a couple of months. And I'm getting my fitness certification so I can start rolling out just like fitness programs and figuring out that community. I want to do more like just IRL, like wellness and like self-care retreats. I've had a lot of people when they see me travel, like, I want to come with you. And I know that there are some companies that help you facilitate group trips. And I think it can all just come together in a meaningful way. And just expanding brand partnership and opportunities to just build more just long-term partnership.
I love that. Well, there is a lot ahead. I really appreciate you spending the time with us today and sharing so much of your story, which again, I know is true to who you are and the brand you're building. So appreciate you spending the time with us today.
Thanks for having me. It was so fun.
Be a friend, tell a friend, and subscribe. Earned by CreatorIQ. CreatorIQ is your all-in-one solution to grow, manage, scale, and measure your influencer marketing program. Ready to unlock the power of the creator economy? Get started with a demo today at CreatorIQ.com.